Thank you, everybody, for attending today. This is, as the man said, Board of Directors Boot Camp 2025, episode number 4, putting it all together with some role playing. It'll be fun, like the title implies. Um, this webinar and webinar series are brought to you by, co-produced by Financial Poise and the National Law Review. You can see more information about each of them on slides 2 and 3. If you're not watching the screen, you might want to, because as I call out slide numbers, I'm going to try to turn to the slides as well. Slide 4 is our legal disclaimer. You kind of know what that's going to say. You're not our clients. We're not your professionals. Don't sue us for anything you might hear and then act upon without talking to your own advisor, because that would be silly. Slide 5 tells you who we are. Alan Grafman of All Media Ventures, Alex Sharp of Sharp Consulting, David Spitolnik of Spitolnik Advisors. I'm Jonathan Friedland. I'm with the Much Cellist Law Firm. Neither the National Law Review, Financial Poise, nor do we intend that this be an infomercial. So you're not going to have to listen to me read bios and display the slides. If you want more information about any of us, go to slides 34 through 37, and you can read about us to your heart's content. About the slides, I'll try to do what I've already done a little bit of. As a slide becomes relevant to what we're talking about, I'll call the slide out. I'll turn to the slide so that if you're watching and not just listening, you can look too and you'll get more out of it. Keep in mind that this particular webinar episode is a bunch of hypotheticals, and we're going to be displaying some background facts that you probably will want to be able to look at for reference. The slide, pardon me, the format of this webinar, consistent with what I just said, and I'm now on slide 10, is a little bit Second City improv, if you will. And like a playbill, slide 10 sets out the 5 scenes or case studies, if you prefer, that we plan to cover today. Slide 11 is a little bit more aspirational. It previews 6 more hypos that we'll likely not have time to get to in this webinar, but which we suggest you review nonetheless after the webinar, because they contain some good information. Along with the hypos or some takeaway points. The 5 slides all assume the same basic setting, or the 5 scenarios, I should say. So take a look at slide 9. ABC Inc. is our protagonist. It's our hypothetical company. It's been in business for 100 or more years. It started as a family business. The founding family's healthy breeding habits, generosity towards employees in terms of equity grants over the years, and the use of equity in connection with acquisitions over the years have resulted in the company now having about 50 shareholders across generations, and not all of them are family members because, again, employees got some acquisition target owners got. The largest concentration of ownership consists, though, of 3 cousins, each owning about 5% of the company. And because there are only 3 directors, each member of the board, each director is also a member of each board committee. And that's the facts. With that, I'm going to take us to slide 12. And notwithstanding that you don't like the tone, you may not like the sound of my voice, I am going to read or I'm going to summarize what I see on this slide for those of you, jogging or jazzercising or what have you as you're listening, you multitaskers out there. So slide 12 tells us that the company's largest shareholder owns 5.5% of the equity, but holds no board seat, has strongly recommended that the board nominate her longtime associate, a retired executive with no industry experience, to fill an open board seat. The GovNom committee chair, who's friendly with the shareholder, supports the idea and places the nominee on the short list without broader vetting first. Other committee members are uneasy, but they feel pressure to maintain a good relationship with the shareholder. Alan is going to play the role of the nominating committee chair, Alex, the board chair, and David, a kind of buttoned up black letter law kind of guy, director. Um, with that, Alan, action. Take it away.
Alex, David, I have some really great news. You know, the family, the three family members, well, they have come up with a great nominee to be on our board. It's the godfather or godmother, you pick which one. They have all decided that this would be a great nominee. Now, you may wonder why it's a great nominee because they don't have any experience, but they have had a really successful business career. They have a good following in the financial community. And more importantly, the three of them agreed that this would be a great director. So while you haven't met this particular person, I did take the time and the committee's been hard at work and I have met with other candidates, but this clearly is the one that the family thinks we should have. So I know it's important that we maintain great relations with the family, and I don't have to say how important that is. So looking for your support because the person that they've nominated is really anxious to hear from me today or tomorrow that this is moving forward. So you're going to get that nomination momentarily. I'll be sending it to you via email, but just wanted to give you a heads up. So I
Alan,
hope that sounds great.
and I'm sorry for interrupting, Alan, but first of all, it was my understanding that it wasn't all three of the shareholders, but just one of them who came up with this name, number one. And number two, don't we have a process? We've talked at length about a process for going through a vetting of directors, and isn't it the case that there's a whole background series of things? And I realize the person may very well be a successful business person and all that, but we spent a not inordinate amount of time coming up with this process. And now you're saying, oh, let's just forget about that. The person's a good person. Let's just put him on. We spent the time. What the hell's going on?
So yeah, no, I'm not saying just put him on. I'm saying let's take a vote and put him on.
Yeah, but
Um,
what kind of vetting have we done of him or
well,
her?
you're welcome to have a phone call with them.
No, 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 no. The phone call is more a phone call is a phone call. I want to know more about his background. I want to know what
Of
we
course.
have a whole background process that we've laid out in our processes for this. And having a phone call, it's kind of step 12 of, or I don't know, step 10 of 10, as opposed to step one and only. I'm sorry, Alex.
Well,
I interrupted you, Alex. You're muted. Alex, you're muted.
That kind of makes the position a little easier, doesn't it? Um, Alan, maybe you could walk us through the process the committee has gone through prior to making a recommendation.
sure, Alex. So as you know, we need a director that will be approved, not only by the board, but also by the shareholders. And we do have some alternatives. They were put forth by members of the community. While this was underway, the family huddled up and put forward this particular person who they very firmly support. And not only do they very firmly support, but they are committed to this person. Now, of course, I've explained that it's subject to a vote of the committee and the board, but they are very focused on this person. They feel this person will very strongly advocate for their interest. And actually, they're a little unhappy with the board. And they feel the board perhaps has not been as effective. And they actually said something along the lines that, of course, they could lead an effort to vote everyone off the board. That was not stated so directly, but that's my understanding. So I wanted to share with you all the facts as to why it's really important that this nominee, they don't have a felony conviction, quoting Bill Murray, there's no felony conviction. They are very highly qualified and very highly supported by the board, by the family, excuse me. So clearly you get to vote however you want. I'm just advising you that there could be repercussions.
You've not answered my questions that I asked a couple of minutes ago, Alan. One was, it was my understanding that this nominee came from one of the family members, not all through all of one of the main shareholders, not all of them, number one. Number two, fine, the person doesn't have a felony conviction. We had set up a process for evaluation, and I understand that if the family is concerned with what we're doing, it would be nice to know rather than just walking in and saying, well, we've got to put this person on. I mean, and I don't know if what you're assuming or what you're implying is, and it seems like what we're implying is we are going to go from 3 board members to 4 board members. And so there's a process, I guess, in the bylaws. Have we already approved that process to increase the board size? But I go back, I'm not even gonna, that's something else. I just go back to, we had set a set of criteria, one of them being some understanding of the industry we're in. And yes, this person may be a successful business person, but if they don't understand the industry that the company is in, I mean, what, what's next? Are we just going to bring in some people who don't have any experience at all in doing anything other than, gee, we like the family and the family likes us, and therefore we're going to be, we're moving from when we joined the board, we were independent. We were people that they brought on, and we're moving from this realm of independence. What is it that we're doing now? We're bringing in family friends. Is this guy a golf caddy of one of the person of the major board? Come on, we set this process. Why are we getting away from it now other than, oh, well, the shareholder, the main shareholder. And again, I apologize, but my understanding from things that were said earlier was that it was one shareholder, and now you're saying, well, it's the shareholders have said X.
So can I
Help me understand
respond?
where we're going.
So David, 3 times you've mentioned one shareholder, not 3. The one shareholder spoke to his cousins and spoke on behalf of them. So sorry if I didn't mention that at the beginning, but I believe that's splitting hairs. So you're all entitled to meet with them. You're all entitled to vote as your conscience directs. I'm just advising you that perhaps you want to have a conversation with the shareholders directly so you can hear what I heard, and they might even express it more directly. I don't know that they want to be enmeshed in this in any great detail, but clearly this is a nomination. Clearly, the board has the right to accept or reject any of the nominees, and clearly there are criteria that apply to this nominee as they should apply to all nominees. So I
Which
think
we're violating, but go
Yeah.
on, keep going.
well, I'm not so sure that putting forward a strongly recommended candidate by shareholders, qualified or not, I'm not
But
certain that we're
Alan,
violating it.
When you started talking, you mentioned that there were other candidates, and it sounded like you were moving the other candidates through the process, but then when the family presented this one, they went to the top of the list. So help me understand where we are with all the other candidates. How many were there? Where did they end up in the process? How were they filtered out? Weren't they filtered out? Was the process just stopped for them? Just help us walk through that.
So thank you for asking that. So there was a process. The other candidates that came up that were nominated were interviewed by the committee. A couple of them independently met with the family at their request. That might be news to you, but that was at their request. And so there is a list, but the candidate that the family has selected is the one that they strongly recommend. So, so that's important for you to know.
That is important. Now, was a skills matrix used?
We used it. I don't believe the family used it on this particular, because again, they have great confidence that this individual who they've known for many, many years, they have great confidence in. I don't believe we made it available to them. I can't say whether or not they used it.
Gotcha. How did you and the committee use it?
We had access to it. We can tell you that not every box is checked for this candidate.
I'm sorry, we are the committee and I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
I apologize for interrupting. I just go on. I'm sorry,
Well,
Alan.
the compensation committee has seen it. So I'll get to the secretary and ask him to circulate it to you.
Okay. Now, what kind of vetting was done? What kind of background checks and the like? All respect to Bill Murray. There's been a lot of financial crime committed by people without felonies. So, well, without felony convictions.
Well,
So,
we did a Google search on everybody. And I'm here to tell you, none of them showed up on any police blotters.
but that was the only vetting, just Google?
Well, we didn't want to spend money without getting the approval of the audit committee. I suppose we could do a little more vetting, and if that's what the board wants, I guess we could. But we were told to come up with some candidates and that this was important, and we had a short time frame, so we really wanted to move quickly on this, and the family wants us to move quickly on this also.
All right, well, David's bringing up some excellent points, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to produce a candidate, make recommendations that's going to live up to scrutiny. And when we have a process and it's ignored, especially with the recommendation coming from a family member, major shareholder like we have here, it starts to raise suspicions. And as the chairman, I'm more worried about the integrity of the process and having good optics on this, because at some point,
You're
it's
not
gonna come up-
questioning my integrity, are you?
No, no,
Okay, want to make sure.
I'm not questioning your integrity. I'm just concerned that you may have come to the right conclusion, but without going through all the steps.
Well, there were a lot of steps. We did use the matrix, and if it wasn't circulated by the secretary, I'm going to blame him for not doing that, because he was when we got started. So he didn't do a good job, and he's going to be the next call.
Well,
But
that's
you're,
fair,
you're,
but
you're
at the end
welcome
of
to
the,
speak. You're welcome to speak to the candidates. You're welcome to speak to all the candidates and judge for yourself.
well, you're going to need to put a recommendation in front of the entire board with the typical package that's required by the bylaws. So have a conversation with the secretary, but we're going to need that before we can put it up for a vote.
Okay, let's stop here. And let me ask, and I've moved this slide, ladies and gentlemen, to slide 13 with just some potential. I'm not on slide 13 now, I am. Observations, points of discussion. David, what did you think of that exchange that you just had?
First of all, Alan, I respect you immensely. Let's just go there. And it has nothing at all to do with this. The I think that we were bouncing back and forth between and amongst these issues of, are we supposed to have an independent board? And then all of the things that kind of flow out from there in terms of a formal skills matrix, third-party vetting, all these kinds of things. And so from my perspective, it seemed as if we may have, Alan indicated we did some of that, but not all of the things that we typically do. And so I thought that we needed to take a step back.
Alex.
I think David framed it up rather nicely, and I think the three of us respect each other. We've worked enough on enough things, and we have to separate the scenario that we're playing in our personalities, right? In our personal relationships. So I think we did a pretty good job of keeping that separate. The thing that stuck out to me is anytime you break a process, anytime you do something different for any reason, it raises red flags. And that's very important when you're trying to retain the integrity of the board, the independence like David was talking about. When you start losing those things and you start losing the checks and balances, it starts to look a little funky and it becomes very hard to defend.
That word process is, really so important, whether we're talking about this particular issue or most any other issue in the context of the way boards of directors operate, right? It goes back to, the legendary Revlon case. There's what's the expression? Form over substance. That's usually like a negative connotation. You don't want form over substance, but process as compared to outcome, maybe by, sort of a cousin analogy. A board can come to what, through the benefit of hindsight, was a less than optimal outcome. And if the process was good, they shouldn't be successfully be able to be attacked for the fact that the outcome turned out not to be good. Process in all contexts of governance is just so important. Alan, is there anything you wanted to say about this before I move us on to our next hypothetical?
Thank you. So I wanted to push buttons. I may have been halfway successful. I'm not sure, but I think I would have been fully successful if Alex had said, no, I don't respect because you ran a crummy process. So I wanted to maximize the soft skills, the frequent conflict, the challenge to maintain standards that often come up. And so I tried to play it to the hilt. And I think we were successful. So on to the next.
Last point. As I wrote the hypothetical, I wasn't thinking that the board has to be an independent board. In fact, we made a point of not, all we know is from the baseline facts is that the largest shareholder is not a member of the board. For all we know, the three of you are all shareholders. So I don't think it was really more about from my perspective, yeah, you ran a shitty process. And that was the problem. Okay, let's move on. Audience, I'm turning us to slide 14. And as you can see on slide 14, our company is expanding operations and needs to lease additional warehouse space. Good bully for us. One of the directors proposes a building owned by a real estate investment firm in which he owns a 25% stake. The offered lease rate is slightly below market and the space fits perfectly for the company's needs. The CFO, who's friendly with the director, the 25% owner director, has already begun drafting terms without running them by the audit committee or disclosing the relationship. And as you can see, our cast for this one, Alex will be playing the buttoned up black letter law kind of guy, director. Alan's the board chair. And David is the one who owns 25% of the building owner, the prospective lessor. David, take it away.
Good afternoon, guys. It's great to see you. And I'm so happy that the company is growing and needs to expand. And I'm also just pleased as punch to say that one of the companies that I'm part of has a building that we believe will be perfect for what the company needs. It will be perfect. It's in the right place. It's got the right amount of space. And frankly, we're even offering it at a little bit below what market is, so that we can move this thing along. We can help the company out. So I'm very pleased that we're here today to just say, okay, let's move on with this. Let's get this deal done.
Cool. So David, that sounds really good. Let me play this back to you and make sure I got it. There is this building warehouse space that you believe fits our needs, and we're getting it a little bit under market, right? Is that what you said?
That's what I said.
And help me understand your relationship with this warehouse space.
I'm a 25% owner and the entity that owns the warehouse.
Okay, great. Now, with this space, has anybody from management actually looked at it, reviewed it to see if it really fits our needs, what the improvements might need to be made? What kind of due diligence have they done on it?
But by virtue of the fact that the CFO has already started drafting the lease, I'm running under the assumption that it's been talked about inside and it's ready to roll.
Okay, so because the CFO is moving forward, you're believing that happened, but you're not aware that it did.
I'm believing it happened, and I'm also, again, knowing what the company needs and knowing what the company that we are directors of needs and what we're doing. I think it fits the bill perfectly. And so
Okay.
I believe it's there.
All right. Has any other due diligence been done? Have we looked at any other property? Have we shopped the deal?
I've presented this company, I've presented this, and I haven't heard of anything else. But again, by virtue of the fact of the CFO rocking and rolling with it, I'm assuming that it fits the needs, fits where we're going.
All right, and you and the CFO are friendly, right?
I think I'm friendly with the CFO. I assume that all of us are friendly with the CFO.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. But you guys have more of a history, if I understand this correctly. So
Yes, sir.
I what feels a little uncomfortable is there's some uncertainty about management having done their due diligence. We haven't looked at any other options. It feels like it might be a bit of a solution looking for a problem, right? It may end up being the perfect thing, but without doing that due diligence, I think it feels a little funny. I don't know how other board members feel, but it feels a little, I'm just not comfortable with it.
So let me speak in support of what Alex has raised. There's a couple elements here, and if we back up, first is confirming that there's a need, which we did discuss this at the last
Yep.
the last board meeting. So there was a general discussion about a need. Um, there was not a specific recommendation brought to the board regarding the process of uncovering this and other spaces. So again, supporting what Alex has just pointed out, we haven't been brought up to speed. And then more importantly, backing up for just a moment, David, this type of related party disclosure needs to happen before any steps are taken to draw up a contract. Now, the CFO did not come to us, and maybe he's under the direction of the CEO. That'll be a different question, a different line of conversation. But clearly, any related party transactions any potential related party transactions need to be discussed in order to maintain trust among the board. And while we know we all have outside interests, this is at the point where it needs to be disclosed before any type of contract is put together. So I'm sure you understand the importance of taking a pause here while we look at all the options. I'm sure you understand that, David, right?
I understand what you're saying. I also understand that the company needs space and they need it yesterday. And the space fits and seems to fit based on everything that they've told us. I brought it to the company and the CFO said, let's rock and roll. And so I'm okay, I understand that there is a process. It's clear that I own a piece of this building, but and I've told you guys, but I think we ought to go ahead with it.
So it won't take long for us to review this with the CEO and then properly look at what the alternatives are and then properly make a disclosure. So I think we're all aligned at this point. So thank you for bringing it to the company, David, and Alex, thank you for highlighting some of the areas that we need to now backtrack a little bit and take care of.
So let me ask you guys a question. Audience, I moved us to slide 15. The facts were intentionally unclear as to, this is a lease, a proposed lease for some warehouse space. Would this conversation have gone any differently if the facts had included that the company currently leases over 100 warehouses and in its ordinary course of business will enter into and terminate and renew a dozen leases a year?
I'm sorry, John. My answer is to the extent, and again, it's this, and I apologize for jumping in and answering first, but this whole notion of related party transactions, I realize that they do a lot. And even if they do things with properties owned by board members already, the process as it's defined seems to have been not followed.
Yep. So my answer was going to be, would it change? Yes. Because the answer I would have given back to David is effectively, come on, man, we do this 100 times a year. You know what the deal is. Come on, this is well established. No discussion. We're done. Do it.
You guys, you didn't take my bait, because if
By
this
intention.
if this was not a related party transaction,
Oh,
if this was not a related party transaction, then this would probably not be an issue that's in front of the board to begin with.
Yep.
agreed.
What else
I'm
do we
gonna
want to talk about here?
well, just one other thing. There's a slight, related parties, it's just generally good to disclose, but if they have 100, then this is one of 12. And for public companies, there's a materiality element, which you could suppose that this would fall under, or you could suppose it falls over. I believe the materiality is like 120,000 for public companies. So that has some bearing. If it's de minimis and there's dozens, you wouldn't want to hide it, but I think the reaction would be less pronounced, less pointed.
Now, again, the fundamental issue, I'd say that our hypothetical David got wrong here. It's a process issue. Yeah.
That I got, yes, yes, we didn't follow process.
At the end of the day, it may be very clear, and David would recuse himself from the vote, right? That this is actually a great deal for the company.
And I think the other point that, again, that not following the process, an area of concern for me is I, as a board member, did not follow the process. Seemingly the CFO, as the man who holds our purse strings, even more importantly, did not follow the process. And so are there other things that he's done where somebody has come to him and said, gee, we think you ought to move on this quickly. So he just said, damn the process and full speed ahead.
That's right. And if by chance, the three of you decided in this conversation that, you know what, seems like a good deal, let's just do it, process be damned. And then after the fact, that decision was challenged, then rather than a standard of, was this a reasonable business decision? It would be judged under the far harsher standard of, was it the entire fairness standard? And so the board, the other two directors might be, they weren't here, but they might be inclined to sort of say, well, look, we trust David and this seems practical. Let's ignore the process. But if it was challenged later, that could be a problem for them. Okay. Anything else before we move on?
Nope.
Okay, I wanted to point out for the audience just a couple of slides we wouldn't otherwise get to. Slide, gotta find it here. Slides 28, 29, 30, and 31 are intended for your post-webinar review. They will sort of hammer in some of the concepts we're talking about. And if you've not watched the other episodes of this series of webinars, they are available, as is this webinar series that really goes into great detail about all the things we're talking about today and more. But now let's move back to slide 16. And slide 16 describes what the board is talking about today. The company's CEO has brought in a compensation consultant that she has worked with at a previous company. The CEO strongly, but pardon me, the CEO strongly recommends the board retain the firm, the consultant, to advise on the upcoming executive compensation review. The consultant, and that's done. The board has done that. The consultant then delivers a report endorsing go figure, endorsing a generous package for the CEO. It's a 40% base salary increase, substantial performance bonuses tied to metrics that the CEO helped define, and accelerated vesting of equity awards. The compensation committee chair seems deferential, and it has a view of keeping the CEO happy. And for this scene, our characters will be played by David, you're the board chair. Alan, you're the buttoned up black letter law kind of guy. And Alex, you're the compensation committee chair. And Alex, take it away.
Cool. All right, thanks everyone. This is a relatively straightforward administrative matter. As you know, we've been looking at compensation. We brought in an outside consultant, and as kind of like I expected, we found out the CEO was undercompensated. So we're proposing this package, and it's not worth a lot of scrutiny. It's really just keeping them happy, bringing them up to industry standard. So if we could put it up to a vote, I'd really appreciate it.
So Alex, thanks for bringing us up to date to a degree. I don't recall that we saw the report before today's board meeting. So I don't know that that's appropriate for us to actually be taking a vote on it. Could you tell us when you actually got the report? Did you just get it today, or did you have it for a while?
No, we've had it. We thought we put it in the pre-reading package. I guess the secretary is really not doing their job for this webinar, right? They've kind of missed a couple things now. But
yeah,
we put it in there. Let me give you the broad strokes. And again, this is really an administrative matter at this point. The compensation consultant came in, did the review, found out our CEO is underpaid by about 40%. We put a bonus plan in that the CEO vetted, and we're looking at accelerating some of the vesting periods. That's the broad strokes. I'll get you a copy.
So thank you for summarizing it, but we won't be able to take a vote on it because we haven't been able to review it. And you've touched on a couple other elements because as chair of the compensation committee, you have the responsibility of working with the consultant and working with the CEO.
Yep.
At all times, we're confident that you retained your independence. And at all times, we're confident that the entire committee was part of this. And at all times, we'd like to be confident that there was not a pre-existing relationship between the CEO, or if there was, that we would have been informed about it. So I think you're right. I think it's a rather simple matter that we have to hold off approving this till our next board meeting, or if the chair wants to call an executive session, we can discuss it further, but we will not be voting on it at this time.
I would suggest, gentlemen, that I thank you both for your points of view, and there's some points of conflict in everything that's being said. One is the fact that the CEO has worked with the consultant in the past may or may not mean that they're buddies. And so, okay, great. We've all worked with people in the past we bring in again, but I think one of the things, going to Alan's point of understanding what the nature of the relationship is fine. I think that the other point that I would go back to is, yes, we had this on the agenda, but there was no information provided in advance. And so understanding that, I believe as the board, and we can go back and look at our charter and bylaws, but and our processes, again, we have a process, and having this material ahead of time to look at, to consider. If we don't have it, it's kind of puts it out, puts it kind of in the back seat, because, we can't really look at it. I think the other, so is the consultant conflicted because they've done work with the CEO before? I think something that we would need to ask is that question. And, what is the nature of that? The notion that we need independent consultants is great, but the reality is that all of us have been in business a long time, and I would wager that most of us have done business with many of the people that we end up engaging as consultants. And so, again, that's a tough one that I think we need to talk about as we are engaging consultants. That's kind of the opening gambit, in that we've got this report now, we're already there. But I think for us to make a decision, again, I would put this on the back burner or whatever, until we get a better assessment, until we get an understanding of what the nature of the relationship is. And so I think, Alex, I mean, I'm not, you're pushing the boundaries here a little bit, but I think it's just understanding, here's some questions that we need to make sure we are able to answer. And then I think the last point is, and again, I mean, this is a tremendous salary increase, and and I'm not sure what's in the package coming from the consultant, but I think we need to understand a whole hell of a lot more of somebody's salary going up by almost, or by 40% here. I need some more background to know why suddenly, and then, the compensation, we have a long-term, or relatively, we have a multi-year agreement with the CEO, but why suddenly 40%? I mean, that seems to me that there's more information. So Alex, I'm sorry, I'm kind of asking you a number of different questions here, and
Let me try to boil it down real quick. It seems like one of the problems is I really thought that the report was in the pre-reading and we'd be able to get to it today. If we could get the secretary to bring the report in, can we do a quick review and put it to a vote?
no.
Oh, that's unfortunate, because we're trying to keep the CEO happy here. And they knew it was on the agenda for, on the board agenda. And I think they're waiting to hear something. Maybe during an executive session or something.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that from my position as chair, I will be happy to talk to the CEO, saying that for whatever reason, there was we didn't get the information we needed in order to enable us to do this. We will look at this, and I would say that, as much as I would like to be able to say, yeah, we're going to look at the report and make a decision immediately, I think that looking at these reports and some of the questions I've asked, I'm not sure if they're answered in the report in terms of why, and why these recommendations, and these kinds of things. I will be happy if, I mean, you're the chair of the compensation committee. If you want to talk to her, that's fine. If you want me to talk to her, I'll be happy to. But just to say, we need another day or two, and we will convene, assuming all of us are available, we'll convene an executive committee meeting in the next few days. Once we've had a chance to review and ask questions, we'll convene a thing and then get back to her. But I think saying that we're going to put it on our tables now, on our desks now, and look at it and be able to, yeah, we can probably get a high level understanding, but I don't know that we're going to be, I personally, and if you guys think that we can come to it, that the two of you can come to a decision that quickly, but I personally think we should let this bake for a little bit before we make a decision. And again, I'm not saying we'll do it in 3 months' time. I'm saying it's just, we need to look at this. We need to ask the questions so that we can get the answers. And, so I'm not ready to say right now, we're ready to, it'd be great if we could see the report now and spend a couple minutes looking at it, but I would wager that there will be questions that come up that are going to need to be answered before we can make a decision.
All right, I think it would be good for you to have that conversation with the CEO, because, you know, we are trying to keep the CEO happy here, and,
Sure.
you know, they've already reviewed the proposal. They helped develop parts of it. So,
I'm
you know,
sorry, the CEO helped develop the parts of her own compensation package.
um, we wanted to make sure that the metrics were part of the strategy, that there was alignment.
Well, again, I would suggest if you can if you can get the report so that we can look at it, we can ask some initial questions, but I will tell you, we've got other things going on in the meeting today that we also need to get to. Yes, this is important, but this is not, from my perspective, a showstopper where we stop everything in order to do this. And if the two of you believe that it should be a showstopper and we do it, I'll listen to you, but as the chair of the board, I think we table this, and I will be, if we want to take a 10-minute break now, and I go and talk to her and say, okay, here's what's going on, but I think we need more than just 20 minutes to look at this and make a decision.
Let's stop here. And I'll turn to slide 17 to put some thoughts on the slide for everybody to think about. But separate and apart from those, let's debrief a little bit. No board book ahead of the meeting is sort of a 101 mistake, right? Just
Very
mention
junior.
that. Yeah, very, very baseline mistake. Who has something they want to talk about here? If not, I've got plenty.
The only thing I wanted to bring up is we didn't really touch upon the fourth bullet. I was hoping we were going to go there, but I don't think we got there yet. That's very important, right? A lot of this stuff is the backlit. It's not so much how the board members react or the CEO reacts. A lot of it is, how do the shareholders view it? You know, what are the optics around it? And again, I've said this in the other scenarios. A lot of times you know, you can make a bad decision for the right reasons, but in scenarios like this, if you can't tell a good story, show you've been very consistent on other areas, you haven't followed your process and the like, that's where you get into trouble.
Yeah, you set this up as a train wreck of a situation if
Oh, yeah.
the other directors would have capitulated, without a
Yep.
doubt, right? And you know, one of the missing facts was, and someone brought it up in the discussion, uh, is the CEO's contract coming up for renewal, or is the CEO looking for something, notwithstanding a change in compensation, notwithstanding that she's in the middle of her contract, which, as the discussion progressed, we decided as a fact that indeed, the CEO is in the middle of a multi-year contract. And at one point, David, I thought you were weakening a little bit, but then you steered away from that, because I thought you started to say, well, if you guys think we can come to a decision quickly, I thought you were kind of opening the door for that. But I think what you said after made me understand that you were probably kind of just saying that for the window dressing effect of keeping the conversation at a good tone, that you never had a real intent to capitulate and say, sure, we can vote today. Is that
Am I
fair?
that readable? Am I that readable? Yes, that's exactly what and again, Alan, I know that I kind of stepped on you and here and probably took some of your fire in terms of some of the points. But no, that's exactly, John. I was trying to set the stage for saying we need time.
Now, the fact that, and one of you, I think, David, you know, in terms of sort of the devil's advocacy that you were using, the fact that we all work with lots of consultants and professionals, and the fact that we want to use them again doesn't necessarily suggest it's because we think we can control them or they'll give us the answer we want or we're getting money on the under the table. It's more likely simply that they prove themselves to be good and capable in the past, and so you want good and capable people. Nonetheless, in a world where there's got to be plenty of compensation consultants as sort of a normative knee-jerk matter, would you ever be comfortable with using the compensation consultant that the CEO recommended and has used before? I mean, wouldn't it just be easy enough to go with somebody else?
Anybody else want to answer the question? I know what my answer is, but anybody else want to answer the question?
Um, I have a controversial opinion on this. Alan, do you want to dive in?
No, I want to hear your thoughts, please. Thank you.
For me, I have no issue with taking a look at a compensation consultant or a consultant that anybody recommends, but I want to hold them to the same selection criteria everybody else does. And if it's a compensation consultant that's going to be looking at the compensation of the person that recommended them, I'm going to hold them to a higher standard. So would I say no out of the door? Nope. Would I do extra due diligence on them? Absolutely.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that, I mean, the reality is, yes, there are a lot of consultants, but part of, especially in something like this, it's both getting people who understand what's going on in the market, and it's also getting people who understand what's going on in our organization. And so having people who they're already up part of the learning curve can accelerate and expedite the discussion without necessarily biasing the discussion. So I wouldn't out of the box say no, but they would have to meet the criteria, and but I wouldn't automatically say no out of the box.
Alan?
So I was thinking of my experience with the two times I've had to hire compensation advisory consultants. I'll premise it by saying that 20 years ago, the CEO to employee ratio of comp was about 7 or 8 to 1. Today it's about 400 to 1. So it's grossly skewed, and compensation consultants are a major part of the reason. So I think what Alex said is particularly relevant, and that's my comment.
I'll simply overlay that again to the extent that we're portraying characters here, and I think Alex did an excellent job of portraying a director who lost a little bit of trust in my mind if I was in the room. The fact that he didn't disclose that the CEO helped define the metrics on which the performance standards were to be awarded only until after he was called out on it. I think that's a real good example of how not to behave as a director.
It's definitely a red flag.
Okay. Let's go to what, based on the time, looks like it'll be our last scene of the day of the webinar, slide 18. And I am displaying it now. So during the year-end audit, the company's external auditors raised concerns about the revenue recognition practices in a recently launched business segment. The auditors recommend adjusting the treatment, which would materially lower reported earnings. Management insists that their approach is valid and pressures the auditors to sign off without qualification. The board, of course, would like to meet performance targets tied to, the performance standards tied to lots of things. And in this case, the targets are tied to a pending credit facility. So they very much would like to be able to go aggressive. The auditors warn they may need to issue a qualified opinion. The audit committee is now caught in the middle. David's the board chair. Alex is the aggressive director, generally, because he's an aggressive kind of guy. And Alan, the audit committee chair, he's the one who's pushing the boundary here. Alan, go.
So want to let the board know of a situation that the audit committee has been dealing with, and we need to bring it to your attention. There's a bit of a difference of opinion between management and the outside auditors. The outside auditors have a point of view that the management is not in accord with, and the audit committee supports management in this regard. It is a material fact that would adversely impact our reportings compared to what we'd like to do. We're not certain how to deal with the outside auditors. This is a firm that we brought in recently. This is a firm that I have spent time with and I've known for quite a while. And I'm prepared to speak with them if that's what the board wants me to do, speak with them in a way that it might not solve the current issue, because if we replace them, then of course there would be a notification. But it may come to trying to bring influence to their point of view. And furthermore, with the CFO, the audit committee has looked at other companies that have reported it in the way that we wish to report it. So we believe that there's a strong case for us to insist that it be reported in the way that management wants. I'm happy to hear what the board thinks about this and how we should proceed.
So Alan, to sum this up, what you're really saying is the people closest to operations or management, you as the audit committee who's designed to ensure the integrity of the process and manage risk, both think it should be done one way and the auditor thinks it should be done another?
That's exactly correct. And this auditor has a history of being extremely to making decisions that are adverse to company desires, and more specifically that are extremely conservative, excessively conservative. And
Ooh.
we have gone and looked at other reporting companies, and we have found some evidence that supports our point of view, supports management's point of view, and we are supporting management in this regard.
And this would, if we followed the outside auditor's advice, we would miss our targets?
That's correct. This is a new line of business. We'd be able to perhaps explain it away because it's a new line of business. It's possible that the accounting for it would change subsequently. It's possible that there could be a FASB that would address this and clarify. But at this point, we are at loggerheads with our outside auditors.
Hearing what I'm hearing, I'd vote for, I support you in management. This seems like a very simple thing to me. I don't know what I'm missing here.
I guess, gentlemen, I appreciate your thoughts and your comments. And Alan, I'm intrigued a little bit by your comment that we were aware of the auditors, I don't know what the word, conservatism, or I'm not sure exactly what the word was that you used in terms of reporting on this type of business, when in fact we knew that this was what we were bringing them into. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I'm concerned about our ability to control. Are we done? I'm concerned about our ability to control what it is that the auditor is saying. Yes, we employ them, but we can't tell them, no, you can't say that. So I'm concerned with the seems to be a breakdown there, and I need help. Oh, great and wise members of the audit, and we're all members of the audit committee, I understand, but I need help in understanding how we can say, no, auditors, you are wrong, when we have brought them in to do exactly what it is that they're now saying that they're doing. So that's a twist
So
there.
let me try to answer that. So this is a new line of business. So we were not able to assess how the auditors would attempt to force us to report it in a certain way. So we had no experience with this new line of business. And then there's two issues here, perhaps. One is the fact of the matter or the assessment, and the other is what to do about it. We, the audit committee and chair of the audit committee, we believe that a reasonable case can be made for management's point of view. And we have found samples of other companies that are reporting it the way we want to report it. And now that's not universal, but most of the companies report it the way we wish to. Now, again, I'll point out it is not a material part of our business, but it's a delta between meeting our numbers and not meeting our numbers. So our assessment is management is correct, and it should be reported in a way that allows us to meet our numbers. And as chair of the audit committee and the audit committee as a whole, we support management. What to do about it? You know, there's a couple ways. One, we can have a private meeting with the auditors and bring pressure to bear. Two, we can fire them and begin a process to hire new auditors. Or three, we can take our lumps and move forward.
I vote for 1 and 2.
Thank you for your support, Alex.
And I guess understanding that I would vote for that, but my understanding is that if we have a disagreement, we do need to report the disagreement. And so while I would go ahead with saying I could support that we put out the numbers as we see them, you know, when the auditors publish their report on the company, assuming that it's published, but you know, the fact that there has been a disagreement, we need to report the disagreement. And so I'm not sure how many layers that will be, you know, underwater in, but you know, I would just, okay.
So fortunately,
I don't think
fortunately,
we have a disagreement yet. Correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have a disagreement yet.
Thank you. It has not been memorialized first, and thank you, Alex. I want to point out it is evolving. There has been conversation, but it's not been memorialized yet. And there may be ways that there may be ways to meet in the middle, perhaps. And also at this early stage, it's not material. So that would also give us a reason to report it the way that we feel is important, because it's not material. It's the delta between meeting our numbers and not meeting our numbers, to be clear, but it is not material as a whole to the business. And those two elements, we believe, management believes, and we support management, allow us to report it in a way that is favorable to the company. And we are hopeful to persuade the outside auditors that what we're laying out in conjunction with market reporting of other companies will allow them to not put a note questioning this decision.
Again, I hope that you're right. And I'm willing to go along on the trying to get them to agree with us or whatever. We need internally to have had some contingency discussions, some what if discussions, if in fact they don't. And then what are we going to do?
So here's an extra step we can do. We can put an inquiry in to the FASB, to the PCABU, the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, for them to make a determination. But until then, what I'm taking from this group is we are going to report it as management wishes to report it.
And with that, we're a few minutes over. The Oscar playoff music has been playing in my ears for a couple minutes now. So thank you, panel. Thank you, audience. We hope you got something from this. The webinar's concluded. Have a good day.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.